Hey, this is William Tincup and Ryan Leary. This is the Use Case Podcast. Today we have Yong on, and we're going to be learning all about his technology, why he built it, why it's there, what it's doing, how his clients love him, all that type of good stuff. So, Yong, would you do us a favor and introduce yourself?
So I'm Yong. I'm one of the co-founders of Wonolo. I'm also the CEO, and Wonolo is the next generation staffing solution for frontline jobs. We primarily focus on light industrial and hospitality sectors. The traditional staffing industry hasn't changed in multiple decades, as you know, and it's still largely manual and slow. And we transformed this model by leveraging software and technologies like AI while not losing the white glove experience for customers, which they really value. And the result is that we have a significantly higher efficiency, quality, and cost than the traditional way. And the simplest way to think about what we do is, if Manpower, Randstad, or Adecco were to start from scratch today, what would they look like? And it would probably look like Wonolo. And that's what we do. And I'm really excited about being here and sharing with you my journey and all the things that I think about and keep me up at night.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. Young, why don't we start with your origin story here? Where did you get this idea? Why did you get started with this?
Yeah, so I'm not a traditional HR or recruiting or staffing person. I do not come from that background. I was trained as an economist, and I followed what many would view as kind of the traditional path of management consulting, investment banking in Wall Street. And when I was in my mid 30s, I hit the wall. My career was going great. I had a lucrative job. A lot of people told me that I had an awesome life, but somehow I was not really fulfilled with my work, and I started questioning about who I was and what I wanted to do. So I quit my job and I did some soul searching. Didn't know what I wanted to do. But I'm originally from South Korea. I came to the States in the early 90s by myself. Didn't speak the language, didn't know anyone. And one of the hardest things that I had to experience was to find a job back then. And this was before Google and internet of the world. So everything was, I had to look up classified on newspaper or do cold door knocking. And that experience was really hard. So when I was soul searching, 20 years later, I was soul searching in my mid 30s, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I had an opportunity to spend some time at a warehouse that was run by Coca-Cola, and there were hundreds of people working at the manufacturing warehouse facility. And one of the things that I noticed was that managers or supervisors there were constantly looking for workers. Workers who quit at the last minute or no show, and they were constantly looking for additional workers, but couldn't find them. And Coca-Cola uses Randstad and Adecco, and these staffing agencies couldn't solve staffing issues whenever these last minute incidents were happening. And then I was just shocked by how frequently this happened. And when I talked to some of the workers, they were also sharing their pain points around how hard it was to find jobs, whenever they needed to. So started thinking about, why is it that companies couldn't find workers, and while workers couldn't find jobs. And this started really clicking with my earlier experience of coming to the States and having a hard time finding jobs while companies were looking to fill these positions, and couldn't believe that even in this day and age, this was still happening and nothing really changed. So I fell in love with this problem. I wanted to do something about it, and came up with this solution of what if we could offer a platform where companies can simply say I need 50 workers between tomorrow and next 3 months, and I'm willing to pay X dollars per day, and the job is located at this location, starts at 8 a.m. simply push the button and 50 workers, let's say Yong is one of them, he's qualified and vetted and background checked, can simply get the job notification on his mobile device, accept the job, show up at the job, and everything that needs to happen from compliance, payrolling would be done behind the scenes so that the user experience between the two, the companies and the workers, would be seamless. And this just became my project. Could this work? And turned out that there were demands from both the workers' perspective and customers' side as well. And yeah, it's something that started as a project. Now, fast forward 10 years,
Here you
we're
are.
still here, and it became a real company, and we are really rethinking how traditional staffing industry has been operating.
So I'm assuming there's ratings on both sides, kind of like Uber, right? So the worker has a rating, the manager of the company has a rating, etc. So that kind of makes everybody play nice in the sandbox. So I like that. So quality is ensured on both sides. And just to be frank, where do you make money in the process? Because traditional staffing, either they own the employee and they upcharge. So if they're paying the employee $8, then they charge the company $10. That's a historical way of staffing. Or they get a placement fee. That's usually in the professional market, not the hourly market. They get a certain percentage of the salary. So what's ish? No, if it's none of your secret sauce, I just where in the process do y'all get paid?
Yeah, it's the former that you explained. So it's a markup on top of the wages that
Right,
workers would take home.
right,
What we want to ensure is that even though how we differentiate in us providing the service is really leveraging technology, um, the end customer experience is still largely something that they're used to. So we
right,
don't necessarily want to introduce too many disruptions to what they are used to, because as you know, the adoption of technology can take a while. So we want to ease them into kind of what they're used to, and then slowly learning how we actually do things in a different ways. So
right.
in terms of pricing, it's the same, markup based.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about your market. Who's your target? Who should be looking to use you? Who should not be looking to use you? Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we primarily go after the sectors that rely largely on frontline workers. So the frontline workers are the jobs that are typically hourly rate. There's high rate of worker turnover.
Hmm.
So it's a very fluid market. So we go after logistics, supply chain, warehousing, retail on the back end, e-commerce fulfillment. And then we also work closely with hospitality sectors, hotels, catering, events, conferences, or stadiums. So these are the markets that we have primarily focused on.
I love it. First of all, it's such an inefficient as you discovered throughout your entire journey. It's such an inefficient marketplace. Like there's talent, there's people that want to work, and there's people that need workers. It's just this inefficiency that y'all have tackled, which I absolutely love. Um, what if one of your what do you call it? Do you call them employees or do you call them workers? One of your
We call them
workers?
Wonolo. I know it's hard to
No, no.
pronounce, but once you get it, it's okay. Yeah, we call them Wonolo.
Well,
Um,
not orders.
yes,
What
great, you
what
got it.
happens if what happens if in that instance like Coca-Cola we want 60 workers, we're gonna be it's gonna happen for 6 months, 8 to 5, blah blah blah. They explain the bit and somebody accepts and let's just say they do an exceptional job. And the company just goes, I'm falling in love with Nancy, we wanna hire her. So what's the conversion uh what does that look like if they want to convert her from a Wonolo to one of their employees?
Yeah, we call it a successful, situation. Like if the customer was able to find amazing, worker like Nancy
Right.
and wants to take on her as full-time, fantastic. And if that's what Nancy wants, that's great. Typically, depending on how long that engagement was,
Right.
we may charge a small fee, or sometimes it's for free. What we have seen is that it's been quite an interesting journey. There are situations where Nancy, may not want to convert full time because
Right.
Nancy enjoys the flexibility, because most times Nancy's probably picking up jobs at Coca-Cola through Wonolo, but also at Nordstrom or other companies, depending on what her needs and interests are. So she sometimes values that flexibility. So in those situations, that transaction wouldn't happen. But yes.
So there's two sides to this, and I was going to focus on the employer side, but let's focus on Nancy first, since we're talking about Nancy. So in this scenario, Nancy likes the flexibility, so she can pick up some jobs at Coke, she can pick up some jobs at Nordstrom's or wherever. Walk us through the experience that the candidate has, or that your contractor or
Wonolo.
Wonolo has, right? But walk us through that experience, and how many jobs are they working? How many can they work? What are you
Yeah.
seeing out there?
Yeah. So, based on our data and experience working with, tens of thousands of workers out there, is that there really isn't like one size fits all scenario where, we have a group of Wonoloers that really value flexibility. And these are typically, they may have a part-time job elsewhere. So like if they have a part-time, 29 hours a week at Walmart or Target, but they want to supplement their remaining hours through Wonolo. In that case, they really value flexibility. Or sometimes there are people who are, musicians or artists, or that have different schedules. They also love this model. But we also have large group of workers that value consistency and assurance that they will have consistent duration of jobs. In those situations, they prefer working with one particular customer, and they also like the fact that they have steady flow of income, and also they don't necessarily have to learn new skills. I mean, even though there are people that love learning new skills, but they like the comfort of knowing exactly what they're going to be doing and where they're going. So, it's been a diverse type of workers that have joined this platform. And what we want to make sure is that we can cater to as many different needs of the workers. If they want flexibility, that's what we will do. If they want consistency, then we want to make sure that they're matched to the right types of jobs.
So Brian and I are fascinated by like Uber and Lyft and DoorDash and things like that. So apps that basically you can turn on and off to work, that day, that particular that time. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is how fast can someone get placed? And secondly, the things you do. You mentioned background checks. You mentioned some of the work that you do to vet the actual Wonoloer. Um, Tell us a little bit about both those things. So, like, if I turn on my phone, I've got the app. How fast can I go get into a gig, right? And then tell us what you do to kind of make sure that quality is ensured for everybody, for all parties involved.
Absolutely. So depending on whether you have worked in many different locations or states, it usually determines how quickly your background check will clear. But
Right.
assume that you have only stayed in one state throughout your career, and you don't necessarily have a lot of changes in addresses. Then background check comes back very quickly. So if today, let's say that you're brand new to Wonolo, you download the app and then you go through the onboarding process that includes, kind of the part of the screening process of making sure that you can actually perform these jobs, and we get to know a little bit more about you, and then you go through the background check. I mean, I would say as quickly as in some cases, we've seen someone accepting jobs in 2-3 hours. So it can be very fast. In some cases where it takes a little bit longer to get the background check results or other additional vetting that's required. It may take some longer time. What happens once you go through the onboarding process is that you're now our behind the scene machine learning algorithm takes into all of your inputs, and then it looks at all the available jobs within the vicinity of where you are exactly, because obviously if you're in Chicago, a job in Miami doesn't really help you. So we want to make sure that it's very much localized. And then based on the matching algorithm, you then get a job notification that, hey, here are 3 jobs that you can work immediately. Would you like to accept them? And it's up to the worker to decide whether to accept or not. And if those 3 jobs do not fit into what they're looking for, they just wait until the next opportunity comes.
So it just quick follow up, Ryan. Is it, can they set proximity, like a certain radius of miles? Maybe they need to use mass transit or something like that. And secondly, can they set parameters? I mean, they can just not accept. So I mean, there's that.
Right.
But things like where they want to work outside or they don't want to work outside, they want to work not in retail, like things like that. Is there a way to do the preferences on the back end so that they don't even see those jobs because they've already opted out of, let's say, hospitality or whatever the bid is? They've just opted out. They don't want any of those types of jobs. So
Yes.
one's proximity, the circle around their zip code, etc. And then the other is about the preferences that they have and what they can do to set those up.
Yeah. So we try to minimize any additional work that's required by the workers. So the way we deal with the preference is every time they see the jobs, new jobs, they can swipe left or right, just kind of like Tinder. So then our machine learns what their preferences are, so that you don't necessarily have to set it. And the reason why we do that is that sometimes workers do not know exactly what they want. So some may say, never want to work at a retail job, but then
Right.
they see the retail job notification, look at it and say, you know what, this may not be too bad. Why don't I give it a try? Or sometimes we see workers where, wow, like, I have never, let's say that I'm a Wonolo or living in Chicago, and I had never traveled outside of Chicago, and all of a sudden I see there are very interesting jobs popping up in Dallas, and it's the duration is long enough that I can actually travel there, pick up these jobs, and experience Dallas while I'm doing these jobs. So right now we are maximizing learning workers' behaviors as much as we can so that we can continue building our database, because we believe that's one of our core differentiators and competencies. So anything that will provide us with opportunities to learn more around their preferences, behaviors, we're trying to design the system in a way that will teach us.
So let's talk about density. Where can, if you're on the candidates or the worker side, I'll say on the worker side, where do you have the most density? And then for the employers, how are you approaching them? We can get into that next. I think the
Yeah, it's a
sales
two-sided
process.
marketplace. You
Yeah.
need both, right?
So
Exactly.
how are you managing that?
Yeah, it's always the chicken and the egg problem, and it's
Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the hardest things that we have to learn, and we're still refining it. So right now, our service is available in all states. We are not. I mean, we can technically offer in Hawaii, but we don't have enough density or demands there. But um, you know, call it 49 states. Where we have the highest density of both sides, the workers and the jobs, is probably tier 1 metro markets. So,
Okay.
Chicago, New York, LA, Atlanta, Miami, and you can go through the list. And then we have expanded into, say, tier 2, tier 3 metro markets. Internally, we have different grading of where the density is, but it really closely follows the total addressable market of the logistics industry. So they're usually formed around logistical hubs. That's where we are most active in. Typically, the way we think about the markets and the two sides of the market is we start with the customer side first. So we go to a customer and say, hey, where do you have the needs, and where do you have operations? And if they say, these are the five locations, then we look at the data and share with them, hey, out of these five locations, three of them we have very strong density. Two of them we don't have enough pool. But if you commit to us for X amount of duration, then we will go out and build a pool for you. And in those two locations, while we're building the pool, our sales team will then go after other customers in those two new locations to bring on other newer customers. So, but the starting point is always start with the customers, because the worker side, we know that once there are jobs, workers will be there. So
Sure.
The customer that you're reaching out to, question about who is that person, and secondly is the technology. Are you connecting into VMSs? Are you connecting into procurement? Like on the back end, technology wise, where does your data need to connect with their data?
Yeah. So the first question, who are these customers? We typically go after either the operations function, so either the COO's organization or the HR function, CHRO. It's whenever companies have staffing issues, it's either one of the two, right? The operators that
Right.
have to manage large amount of workers that are feeling the pain, and when they feel the pain, they immediately reach out to HR to help us solve that. And if HR cannot solve that, then they reach out to third-party agencies. So we go after both functions, and whoever becomes the champion, then we work with them. But usually the two sides get involved. And regarding the second, how does our technology get deployed? No integration required. It's as simple as the job requester, creating their login and then simply logging into our portal, and then they can start requesting workers, and they can manage all the workflow through our portal. So it's as simple as using any SaaS solutions.
What do customers love most about you?
I think they love the fact that we are very transparent. So if I compare the experience of traditional agencies, let's say that William needs 20 workers, picks up the phone and calls a Deco account manager and says, I need 20 workers. The account manager will probably say, oh, William, we definitely cannot send you 20 workers tomorrow, but we will work on it, and then maybe check in with you about a month and then tell you where we are, and and whenever we get these workers, we'll send them to you. And in a month, maybe William gets few workers, but doesn't have any details about where what the backgrounds of these workers are, where they have worked, how many jobs that they have done. It's just basically at the will and the mercy of the agencies. In our platform, exactly if Yong picks up the job, William can look at the profile of Yong, and looks like he has done similar jobs from other companies, and he's 5-star rated, highly preferred Wonolo. And then in terms of pricing, it's also very clear. Sometimes agencies like to do like bill rate, and even though they may say, oh, don't worry, like workers will get this much, and we're only taking X percentage of markup, but still it's not clear. For us, it's very clear. If you say $18 an hour is what workers get, that's what they get. And you can follow that and track that on our platform. You can do a lot of analytics on it. How what your usage has been, what the fill rate has been. So everything is very transparent, and I think that's what our customers really value, because it takes away some of the uncertainties and unpredictabilities out of them. And obviously the return on investment from a cost perspective, they really like it, and we also want to make sure that we don't miss out on the performance, fill rate, time to fill, all those things that customers care about. We are very competitive.
Why do people say no? Like, I think Ryan and I are both shaking our heads, going, "Yep, makes sense. Check."
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
Makes
know,
sense.
yeah,
Where they
makes
push
sense.
them back? Yeah. Where do
Yeah,
they not like you?
There
right.
are two primary reasons. One is, either they're used to what they're used to. So either they have 20 years of relationships with their existing agencies or their salespeople, and they're quite loyal to it, even though it may not be the best solution, and they have grown to learn to deal with some of these pain points. So there's a bit of that. We are the challenger, we are the new kid on the block, so there is still some learning curve that they have to think through. Or if they are used to hiring on their own through their HR department, they don't necessarily want to introduce something new to the system. So that's probably one. The second one is the question around the quality, right? So oftentimes when we pitch our product or service, it sometimes sounds too good to be true. So they say, well, Young, we haven't seen these workers before. We haven't really vet them ourselves. So, like, how do we know that they can actually do the job or they're high quality? So it's there has to be a bit of trust us or like try us. You don't have to ask for 20 workers. Maybe try with small amount of workers and then see for yourself and see how the experience goes. So there's a bit of that. So I would say that the general commonalities among those who say no are like not as open to new ways of doing things. That's probably what's causing that. But we've been in this business for 10 years now. It's getting easier and easier to convince them because they are now becoming a little bit more familiar with the way we do things. So now we just got to make sure that we say what we do, we do what we say, and continue ensuring that quality is as high as we can deliver.
Now or in the future, uh, do you think that second chance opportunities, um, uh, I- 70 million people have felony convictions, right? So there's this push, or has been a push, at least in the last couple of years, to try to tap that talent market. And again, not all felonies are the same. I totally understand all that stuff, but to try and tap some of that market for jobs, you've seen an increase on the staffing side of folks that, okay, in certain jobs, yes, this would actually make sense. It doesn't matter if they have a felony conviction, and again, depending on what conviction and how long ago and all that stuff, I think that does matter. Um, are you getting any requests from customers, or are you getting any from folks that possibly want to be placed that are second chance folks?
Yeah, I actually really appreciate that you brought this topic up because it's as a company we are a huge believer and proponent of offering second chances, and we definitely have been open to customers that hey um, you know workers with prior background um, are some of the most untapped opportunities out there, and based on our data they are some of the best workers. So if you're willing to forego some of the background check requirements, we will offer you pricing incentives like discounted fees or whatnot, because
Oh,
our
cool.
goal is to bring these workers back into the job market as much as we can. And so we try to introduce different incentive structure to ease them into trying this new segment of untapped worker pool. So yeah, it's definitely one of our key initiatives that we are continuously working on.
And
We have
it's
we have definitely
really
seen more
important.
customers reducing the background check requirements.
Yeah, and it's really important as well. It's a good
They're
thing.
also loyal, Ryan. That's the thing that people
Totally.
don't get about second chance folks. And again, not all felony convictions are the same,
Sure.
and the distance between when they were in jail or all that stuff does matter. But one of the things I've seen in the data is, man, they're crazy loyal. Like, you hire a forklift driver, they've never been able to get that gig. So they get that gig, they work
They stick
hard.
around.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
extremely loyal.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I interrupted you, Ryan.
No,
Yeah.
no.
No, that's fine. So I want to jump into the sales part of the sales process with you because I think William and I get this. We like it. We love what you're doing. I would assume most companies understand it, they get it. I'm assuming a lot of them push back, like you said, they're just not willing to take a risk or to try something new. What are a couple of questions, maybe two questions that you would wish they'd ask during the sales process that they're not?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, um, I think they're used to hearing that, whenever traditional agencies pitch to them, and
Mhm.
when they ask about, okay, how are you different from another agency? The answers are usually, we have better workers, or we have better team, or it's very
Yeah.
indistinguishable, right? I would hope that our customers that we engage with would really lean into understanding what do you mean by that? What do you mean by better quality? What do you mean by better team? And focus really on like quantifiable data, because we
Mhm.
can actually objectively provide all the data the customers need to show that we actually perform significantly better. So like, I'll give you one example. Whenever we talk to because we also work with local agencies that have trouble, finding workers for their own customers. In those cases, we come in and then we help them, because ultimately, what they want is customers, are getting what they need. So we would come in and we would partner together. And whenever I would ask staffing agency owners around fill rate, so I would say like, hey, what is your fill rate? They would say, well, we don't really measure it. It's actually 100% all the time, so we don't really take a look at it. But it's actually not. But for us, like
It's always 100.
yeah, it's always like, and I would be like, oh, show me the data. Like, how do you track it? Or how do you think about it? And there's nothing. Whereas for us, like every single job, every single shift that gets posted, we track how quickly we fill them, what is the cancellation rate, what is the no-show rate, so we can be really granular. So having access to this level of data actually helps our customers operate their whatever operations that they are in, be a lot more efficient. So I
Yeah.
would probably hope that they would lean into more data understanding or diligence. The
Yeah.
second thing is, um, you know, being open to try something small. So if the uncertainty or fear or of unfamiliarity is getting in the way of making the decision, then always we can start small pilot that's low risk of failure, so that they can really get to know us and understand that this is actually much more seamless and easier than the traditional way. So instead of starting to focus on like, oh, how can we scale this to 20 cities or 2,000 workers, maybe break that into smaller segments and then start small at the beginning and gradually build a trust with us and longer term relationships. So I think those are two that probably come to my mind.
When you're working with a staffing firm, whose customer is it? Is it still their customer at the end of the project or whatever? Is it still their customer? And if that company calls you directly, is there a rub between you and that staffing company?
Yeah, sometimes. So initially, our end customer will be, so it'll be their customer because they have
Right,
an existing relationship.
right.
But from the benefit for us is that ultimately we are worker first company. So we any job opportunities that we can offer to Wonoloers on our platform, that's a win for us, whether we have the direct relationship with the end customer or not. But there are times when our end customer would realize that, wait a second, like these workers actually came from this, platform called Wonolo. Like, let me look into what that is. And there are situations like that. And I think in that case, then, we want to make it clear to the traditional firm that, hey, in the end, like we want to do what's best for the workers and the customers. And if the customers want to directly work with us, then I think it's the right thing to,
Right.
grant their wishes and meet their needs. So, yeah, there are some situations that can be thorny, but I think in the end, performance speaks for themselves. So we want to be objective in these situations.
Yeah, and I think that happens across pretty much all
100%.
partnerships, right? At some point,
Right.
there's a crossover, and that's just what it's going to be. I know, we're coming up on time, but Young, I've got a question, and I'll let William kind of end it off here. What is it that you love most about this process?
So I started by saying that I don't have any HR or recruiting background, and I came in to
Hmm.
this field by accident based on my pure passion and my own experience of struggling to find jobs. And now that I've been in it for 10 years, and as both of you know, like building a startup from the ground up and going against these, Goliath, juggernaut staffing agencies
Mm.
is incredibly hard. We went through many, many near death moments, and then still, even today, like we are always trying to up our game so that we
Hmm.
can provide more jobs for Wonoloers. But what keeps me going through these many near death, stressful moments is that the feedback that we get from the workers is just like, I mean, it's just really inspirational. So like for me, I love going out to the field, meeting customers, meeting Wonoloers constantly, and I travel quite a bit to do that. Um, and every time I meet with Wonoloers, I hear their life stories. Like, for example, last week I met this Wonoloer, Kingsley, and I think his story is very similar to what William described. Like he was in security, he was a security guard, and there was an accident, and the accident had a quite fatal event, and he was let go from that job, even though the accident wasn't his fault. He was let go, and he couldn't find the next job because this incident kept on following him. And as a result of that, he lost his house. He lost all the things that he had. And he said that this was probably one of the hardest moments in his life, and no one would give him a job. And someone told him about Wonolo, and he downloaded it. And that day, he started working, and now he has a house. He's now married, and he was just sharing with me unprompted, right? Like, and he was just telling me how this was, has been a game changer for him, and he just couldn't believe that, something like this would exist. And every time I hear about stories like this, and how many more, workers that are out there that are not aware of Wonolo, like it really keeps me going. So came in here by accident, but now like I'm in it for this like inspiration and the impact that we're making, even though it may be just small for now. That's been incredibly gratifying.
So I did have a question on drug testing. Um, do a lot of your clients now, do they still request or require drug testing, or like what's the percentage of gigs that kind of come up that's still a bit?
Yeah, we have been seeing, I mean, over the years, fewer and fewer.
Yeah,
The ones that still require drug testing are in certain sectors, so either healthcare, pharmaceutical,
right.
or
Machinery.
like
Yeah,
very large corporations, like enterprise, like Fortune, 100 type
oh,
companies
interesting.
that have that deal with a lot of compliance needs. They still require it, but if it's mid-market um, size companies, they understand now that it's, you know, realistically impossible. I mean, certain states, they now,
It's
I don't know,
accepted. Yeah.
certain things are
Co-
legal now. So
Colorado.
yes, it's becoming harder. So Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want the worker, good luck. To answer Ryan's question earlier about what you'd love for the prospect to ask you, to me it's a kind of a confluence of transparency and speed and ratings and kind of seeing that specific work history in an app. Just being able to see all that
Yeah.
stuff really fast seems to me is a true differentiator from
Yep.
some of those traditional staffing models.
Well,
Absolutely.
it's the DoorDash, the Uber
Right,
experience that we've all
right.
grown to. I mean, I'll go on and I'm like, I don't like this driver, right?
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
kind of move on if I need to. Yeah,
I like that experience for both parties.
yeah,
So, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like for both parties, that they have that transparency, which you don't get in a traditional staffing model because you want those 60 bodies. They just need a heartbeat. You're
Right.
not you're not really looking at transparency. You're
yeah,
not looking at, and again, not looking at the important things of that pay transparency. Something as simple as that, because that can get you jammed up really quickly in the traditional staffing model. If they find out that job pays $18 and they're getting paid $15,
problem.
they feel like they were cheated, and so it can create a kind of a rift between the staffing company and that company or employee, etc. So I don't have anything else. Ryan, do you? You
No,
good?
I'm good. I appreciate the conversation, Young. I love what you guys are doing. I'm excited. I'm actually going to go download it and check it out.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And yeah, thank you for the amazing questions. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity to reconnect with you. And yeah, we'll keep going and keep creating more job opportunities for Wonoloers out there.